Joining me now is Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. It's great to see you. The Department of Homeland Security oversees a lot. I will start there. So there's so many things I want to ask you about, specifically misinformation. But before I get there, I just want to start with a story that's on the top of the New York Times right now as people are watching the hurricane and hurricane movement. The New York Times is reporting that FEMA is running out of staff to respond to this hurricane that seems to be barreling towards Florida. The story says that only 9% of the agency's personnel is available. So for people watching out there, I mean, does DHS, does FEMA have what it needs to respond to the storm?
Jen, great to see you. Yes, it does, quite clearly, and everybody should rest confident that FEMA has the resources. We already have 900 personnel deployed, pre-positioned in Florida, people who were responding to Hurricane Helene, people who were responding previously to Hurricanes Idalia and Debbie. We are there. We have search and rescue teams. The Army Corps of Engineers are there. We are ready. We have the personnel. FEMA likes to say it is FEMA flexible. We can respond to multiple events at a single time.
One of the things that, and you certainly are doing that right now, I talked a little bit about misinformation, the spreading of it and the impact of it. And I said kind of in there, this is not normal. I've been around this town for a long time under Democratic, Republican presidents, not that everything's been perfect, but you've also spent a lot of time in government. The level of misinformation that we're seeing right now that's spreading, that's giving people inaccurate understandings of what's happening with the hurricane. Have you seen this before?
I have not seen it ever before at this level. You and I both remember a time when an extreme weather event, a natural disaster, actually brought people together. Now, unfortunately, tragically, quite frankly, it is politicized. And what happens is the people who are victimized by the natural disaster are the ones who will suffer. It sows distrust in their government, and therefore they don't seek the help that they truly need. We have funds to put in their pockets to be able to help them address immediate needs. These individuals are not seeking that relief because of the disinformation, the intentionally false information they are receiving. It also debilitates, Jen, our workforce. These are individuals who are putting their lives on the line to search and rescue for victims of Hurricane Helene, a hurricane of historic magnitude. It is very sad.
It's very sad.
And very
it sounds
damaging.
Like you're saying that people feel like government can't help them, so they're not seeking the information that they are entitled to, which is very alarming. I wanted to ask you about, one of the themes we've also seen with how Trump spreads misinformation is that it's the targeting of migrants often, and the migrant community. We saw that in Springfield. We've seen that a bit around the hurricanes. You're a child of immigrants yourself, but also as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, you oversee and you watch this issue closely. I want to play something he said this morning and get your thoughts on it.
She has no clue. How about allowing people to come through an open border, 13,000 of which were murderers? Many of them murdered far more than one person, and they're now happily living in the United States. Now a murderer, I believe this, it's in their genes, and we got a lot of bad genes in our country right now.
That's obviously disgusting, what he just said. And I want to put the politics aside here and ask you kind of on a personal level, but also, if I may, as the Secretary of Homeland Security, how concerned are you with the repetition of that rhetoric and how migrant communities are being targeted by his supporters?
I think, Jen, you put it powerfully just a few minutes ago and quite poignantly. We have parents who are scared to send their children to school because of this demonization, because of the false information, the targeting of migrants. In our darkest chapters of world history, we've seen this demonization victimize millions of people. You referenced my personal story. 6 million Jews were killed in World War II. My mother lost a tremendous amount of family precisely because of this type of rhetoric and the violence that it breeds.
I can't imagine how you digest this on a personal level, especially given your responsibilities. I did want to ask you, because you referenced your mother and you referenced your family, and your mother is a Holocaust survivor. Yes. Today is the anniversary of October 7th. You are somebody who has spoken out powerfully against anti-Semitism. You see the rise of it, but you're also a Jewish American. How are you digesting this moment a year later?
Jen, this is, my mother passed away in 1997. This is the first time in my life since her passing that I'm almost relieved that she is not alive to see what occurred on October 7th, 1 year ago. Today, she would have been fearful of the survival of Jews across the world, and yet we are confident in our resilience and the resilience of all individuals of all faiths. We have to fight hate, and the tragedy of October 7th was just absolutely horrific, and we have a duty to remember it, to never forget it, and to be quite resolved it never occurs again.
Before I let you go, I do want to ask you, just as we look ahead, we're 29 days out from the election. I watched President Biden go to the briefing room for the first time since he was president, of course, and he said something that struck me as quite honest, which is he's confident it's going to be fair. He's not sure if it's going to be peaceful. And with everything we saw in 2020, that shouldn't be a surprise. I also know that at this point, just a couple of weeks out of the election, you, he, other members of the national security team are likely meeting to prepare for what could happen. Hopefully it's peaceful. Are those meetings happening? How confident are you that it's going to be peaceful? And how are you approaching it at this point in time?
I am hopeful that it will be peaceful. There is reason to be concerned that it might not be. And it is our job in the Department of Homeland Security to be prepared for whatever eventuality occurs. And that is exactly what we are doing.
Which means internal discussions and meetings now for any scenario, especially given what happened in 2020.
That is our obligation, and we are executing on it.
Secretary Mayorkas, it was a pleasure seeing you. Thank you so much for being here with me this evening.
Thank you, Jen. Great to see you.